positioned. This topic is apparently much sought after. We've got quite a crew showing up to listen in. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ernest Lefner. I'm the Chief Product Officer with Blueware and the co-founder of the Open Network User Group. This topic we've got today is kind of exciting. We're going to be talking about full stack observability, building integrated solutions for network and security operational landscapes. I would read the whole description for you all, but I suspect ChatGPT may have been used in its creation. And so there are many words in there that I might not understand, so I don't want to embarrass myself. Why don't we take a moment just to introduce the panel? Pranav, why don't you lead us off?
Hi, my name is Pranav Dharwadkar. I'm the VP of Products at F5 Distributed Cloud. I came in through the Volterra acquisitions, where I was the VP of Products. And Volterra essentially is now F5 Distributed Cloud, which is the SaaS platform for F5, where we're delivering all of F5 services on F5 Distributed Cloud.
Hi all, I'm Aryo Krishnadi. I'm a technical director for FedEx, managing the network architecture and technology for FedEx.
Hello everybody, Sinan Islamovich. I'm a head of technology at Nokia Enterprises. So effectively, most of the things that we do in Nokia Enterprise and how Nokia focuses in the wireline line of business toward enterprises, I cover my team in North America.
My name is Jeremy Rosbach. I'm the Chief Technical Evangelist for the Network Management and Observability Solutions at Broadcom.
Thanks, y'all. I do want to point out that Ario's been a board member since the founding early days, as well for ONA. So let's call that out. 10 years, Aryo.
Yes, next year, 10 years. Yes.
All right. Now the fun stuff. We're talking about building integrated solutions for network and security operational landscape. What does that mean? That's a lot of words there. I know there's been a lot of work going on. Let's find out if there's some value. So what does this topic mean to you, and what are some of the key themes that matter as well? And why don't we kick off with Sanaa?
Me? Okay. So, if you look at, the key word of the day is AI, right? And a lot of VC funding is all around AI. And then when you look at the networking, we're still using SNMP to troubleshoot the networks, right? How ironic. So to me, what we're looking here is really how can we leverage, right, AI landscape, not what we deliver, but we actually take from the AI ecosystem and introduce it in the networking world. So when we talk about observability, right, I think the first place you look at it is, how I can, before I drive my car, right, I need to be able to, or before Tesla does self-driving, right, it has to be able to see, observe, and then make decisions. So when we talk about full stack observability, to me, it's like ability for us to really take data out of the network, visualize things correctly, contextualize it, analyze it, and then do something with that.
So just a quick follow-up there. Every time Tesla runs over a fake kid in the road in testing, it's an observability problem?
Always. Didn't see it. So that's where I take out of it.
Awesome. Jeremy?
You mentioned data, and I don't think any AI or AI solution is going to be good unless you're pumping in good data. So I think it all starts with data. The most data you can collect and correlate it, normalize it, and clean it up, and then surface it to the engineers and level 1 NOC operators so they can make quick root cause decisions. So I think it all starts with the data.
Fantastic. Pranav?
So I'm going to focus on to answer your question. Data, AI is good, but the first thing is there's a lot of improvements done for automation of deployments and orchestration and all of that. But if you look at an operator's world, there's not a lot done for the operators. There's a lot of data, as you said, but how do you interpret the data? And network and application layer, these are two disparate sources of data. And so in F5 Distributed Cloud, one of the things that we see is, because we run a SaaS service, all of our customers, they come to us to say, all right, so, what's happening I cannot reach my application. And that requires everyone to troubleshoot all the way down from, is the network even up? Is the control plane even up? And is my application actually, on the pop? And is my application reachable? So anyone who's going through any debugging or any troubleshooting needs to know this entire flow. So when he asks, what does that mean for me? It is, how does my operator, how my NOC and my SOC actually solve my customer's problem to say what's happening to the application, is it reachable, and they need to look at all of the tools available, and make those tools useful for them easily, so that they can actually solve the problem for the customer.
All right, Ariel.
So why we are here, isn't it? Or why I'm here basically when we're talking about data, when we're talking about lots about data, isn't it? For a long time we have what is called the NOC to manage the network data. Then you have the server ops to manage the server data and so on. What do you see in the last few years? The increase of basically cyber attack around the world. The first thing that my infosec peer asking me will be like, can I use the same data? That will be the first why I think I'm interested to talk about that, isn't it? When we're talking about full basically stack observabilities. The challenge that we always have basically that we have the data, but how do you really conversing the data into the right audience? In this case, basically network, we know. Then my infosec team always wants to basically do the same thing with the same data. What we don't want, of course, to basically double send the same data over and over again. Then the data become the business, which is not a good idea. So that's why basically I'm interested to see basically where we are, where we want to go. Of course, the input with you guys too. What is really important for everybody, including us as enterprise, or basically the partner here in terms of building the product, the right product to satisfy that requirement.
I appreciate that. And I also like that you're giving up job security by being the lord of data at FedEx. I think it's gonna be important. So we talked a little bit about we talked about what it means to us. I think the session description kind of narrowed things down a little bit from the concept of endpoint, network security, telemetry, and holistic threat detection. But I don't think you can have this conversation with just those three topics, right? I think that's worth pointing out that it's really a lot broader than that if you really want to be successful. And so let's now skip to the end, right? Let's talk a little bit about the value, and then where do we end up, right? What does good look like? As you guys are crafting your strategies inside your companies, what does that forward vision look like? And Jeremy, let's start with you.
You know what? Good right now looks like getting the NOC and the SOC teams just talking and sharing data. I mean, any breach in the network is going to happen at the network first. So if you have an edge router that is at 100% CPU and high memory, that's probably an indication that the network team can let the security team know that something's going on, right? The more collaboration, the better. Obviously, unified type of dashboards for network teams and SOC teams so they can see that consolidated data in one view. But I mean, the network team is where to start. I mean, that's where you're going to see the breaches happening, and that's where you can start your investigation and find the root cause from there. So as soon as we play nice on the playground, I think a lot of good things can happen.
Well, knock and sock rhymes. So
yeah.
that's like
that's a start.
Right,
that's a start. Right.
So Pranav.
What does good look like? For me, what good looks like is, there's no unifying key across network, security, application, server. There's no unifying key, right? How do you find out if a problem happens? How do you do the correlation across all these disparate sources of data? And how do you show a unified view to the operators? For me, that's what good looks like, is can I unify this in a simple, easy to consume fashion for the operators that they could quickly do a drill down, each doing a drill down in their own fashion, and not doing it in a different way, or SOC doing a different way. But can they start by seeing there is a problem, and the problem can I drill down to the right place? For me, that's what good looks like, is unifying all of the data and using AI/ML in that process in order to show that unified place, and then offering a persona-specific drill down.
Mario.
So when we're talking about, let's assume 3, 4, 5 years from now, isn't it? When we're talking about what good is about, like you mentioned, is about really the NOC and the SOC can get the same data, for example. Then Pranav, you mentioned about unifying the data, isn't it? in between basically what we're looking into characteristic data modeling. When you're talking about right now, what is the challenge right now, isn't it? When we're talking about logging, whatever the data logging or whatever the SNMP is, isn't it? Is that really needed? Or if it's really needed, what is really that you change your data model to become a metric base? That is because I don't think all of us, even AI, isn't it? It's just a matter of timing that what is really so much data in the data lake that become garbage in, garbage out. So the idea is that basically when we start what is really one day in the future in my area is always is about that we deal with metric. What is really understanding that metric is about? What is good, what is bad? That is where we need to go.
I don't think I have much to add because you guys really covered it. What's good? So let me go back to what's nirvana. Nirvana would be, I think, Kiretti coined this like put some 7 8 years ago. Self-driving networks, right? And then let's work backwards. What does it take for my network to truly be self-driving, right? So AI is component on it, and if I again work backwards, I need proper machine learning tools. I need the right models. Work backwards again. How do I get to those models? I need to extrapolate data. I need to once I extrapolate it, I need to normalize it. I need to contextualize it, and then I have to run them and train them, and eventually have them be self-training. So I can, as we solve certain problems certain way, now we go back and add that element into the data as well. It becomes a cycle. So that's what I think.
Well, I think first, thank you for representing self-operating networks. If you got any questions, stop by the
Self-driving,
Clearware booth. If you can help out there. All right. So we talked about a variety of different things. It's super clear that data is important. But let's start slicing this up just a little bit more. You guys have talked about the knock and the sock and the gap and this whole cybersecurity gap. I mean, is it real? Like, do we really need a unified platform? Where are we now, like current state? And then what's your view on that? Right? I mean, is that critical? And Pranav, why don't you lead us off?
It's absolutely critical. As we run a SaaS platform, we get attacked almost every week, if not every few days. And the first thing that my NOC guys and my SOC guys need is, who's the customer getting attacked? What is their application? And it starts from the network, as you said. And there is a gap. There is a gap today. It's two different sources of data, and actually, how do you find that? And so, is there a need for it? Absolutely. There is no there is no two ways about it. Is there enough data available? There is. There's enough data available on the network side, and on the application side, and on the server side, and on the configuration side. The problem is it's not unified. That's what the problem is, and it's not unified in a way that's easy to consume. You need to be a PhD to actually consume it, and that's where I see the value, and that's where that this is absolutely required in order to resolve issues within minutes rather than taking days.
Aria.
When you're asking about do we need to unify the knock and the sock, I still don't know yet at this point, in the sense that do we need to do that before what Pranav mentioned, isn't it? What is to do with the data first? Organizational usually, which is interesting, I'm not sure how many people can chiming in here. How many people in this audience here got a SOC that totally operational? Anybody? Do we know? The reason I'm asking is like this. Most of information security is an incident management, not operational management for that. While when we're talking about that, the NOC is operational in nature. So that would be the question about unifying or not. But back into Pranav mentioned, I agree completely. How do we get into maybe not unified, but basically commonize basically the data platform itself? Because right now it's too much basically duplication.
I'll agree with both of you guys. I think it's needed, but I'll go back to history learns, right? I don't know if it's going to be possible, right? We had SDN, we had optical layers, we had IP layers, we had SD-WAN, we had DevOps, we had NetOps, right? Everyone talked about collaborating, integrating teams. There's a lot of, structural things that happens within the companies and whether you can create the teams like this. Ideally, I would say yes, but from the history lessons of the past, I think we are far away from there, right? So I think definitely first step is getting the data, minimizing the sets of it, and making it useful, and then we'll see where it takes us.
We need some more positivity on this panel because you guys are like half glass empty, kind of. No, I think it's totally possible. I mean, who the hell would have thought SD-WAN would have caught on 20 years ago? I mean, networking is moving a lot slower when it comes to, adopting a lot of these new technologies, but it's happening. And I invite you to the Broadcom booth to check out how we're unifying all this data already. I mean, from logs to health to CPU to memory, the packet loss, latency. This is across multi-vendor technologies. And that is a lot of data already correlated and normalized. So if we can bring in the security aspect of it, it's just getting down that road a hell of a lot quicker. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll call it the SNOC, the SOC and the NOC. The SNOC is coming, the integrated SOC and NOC.
So I think we all work for fairly large companies or have in the past. And getting them to agree on what color the envelope should be to ship mail is a huge monumental task requiring hundreds of approvals. The idea that we're going to snap our fingers and bring the NOC and the SOC together seems a little crazy, right? The education, the skill sets, everything that you need is different across both of those different components. So let's ask this question. And I'm beating this like a dead horse for a reason, because I think it all comes down to the data, which is the next part of this discussion. Is this even feasible, right? I don't see it as feasible. I see that you can get to a common layer of data. I think you can get to a common layer of tools and abstraction that then routes the right information automatically to the people who need it so they can make good decisions. But I don't see anything other than a knock sock fight like a UFC battle. Do you know what I mean? Like people in there swinging away over who's more important. So love your thoughts on that. I think Ario.
Back into the data again, I think it will say that at the end of the day there is the need. When we're talking about the need, isn't it, that the good thing, the need is the same. As a company, we have to protect ourselves using the same amount of data we have. It's not sustainable to go next to the next level, isn't it? So while organizational, like you mentioned, Ernest, is like really hard. However, that back into the data again, the more you can commonizing, I keep using the word commonizing of the data pattern, the data lake, and so on. That's become the business decision to basically understanding what is the saving that we can have to do that. Then at that time, there is hopefully nobody doing the UFC anymore.
Yeah, right. And by the way, you just patented commonizing. That's now you. If we all hear it out in the wild, we can all thank Ario for that. Sanad, go ahead.
So I'm sort of both ways, right? So definitely need for it. Is it possible? I'm leaning that it's hard to get there, getting the data out, neutralizing it, and then I think each individual group doing different things with the data. But having said that, if you guys in Blueware and you, Jeremy, in Broadcom, or the other folks, I think there's like a selector AI here. If you guys can, go across the domains and give us, outcomes across entire domains that we can all, use from whichever landscape we look at it, absolutely go for it. If you can achieve it, we'll use it.
Well, listen, I think every vendor out there like Broadcom should start with the low-hanging fruit, right? Let's not try to boil the ocean. We're not trying to solve every single problem. But if we can help the NOC, help the SOC start their investigation at this point, this router, if the SOC knows something's going on, the first question they should ask the NOC is, you have any high utilization on any of your devices right now? And the NOC's going to know that answer. So let's just start with the low-hanging fruit and level 1 NOC use cases that help the SOC, and then let the level 2, level 3 engineers go into their sideload data to find the real root cause.
I think there's the question is this possible? And I think there's no two ways about it. It has to be possible. In fact, it is possible, right? I think the move to product vendors selling as a SaaS service, once you do that, once you're delivering a SaaS platform, You're offering a SaaS service, you have to do it. And you see more and more products have been selling as SaaS. Once you do that, you yourself become operators. And once you become operators, you'll feel the pain of the lack of your own data that your customers are feeling. And so you better solve the problem if you're not solving it already. And we are in FR Distributor, we are doing that. And I think this is the future. I mean, this is not the future. This is the present, and it's going to be the table stakes for everyone if it's not already.
All right. Thank you for being so positive. Let's drive that up another level. Because in the end, I think I agree that eventually we'll get there, but sometimes it's nice to throw a little bit of a wrench in the plan. So ultimately, we talked about that feasibility. So let's talk about the data, right? Because I think everybody has agreed in one form or another that the data is key. Let's talk about a couple of things that you can bring into your answer. I'm going to combine two questions together. Can the data stream and combining the knock and sock for that data, can it solve for both use cases, right? Can we do it with current state capabilities, right? And then follow that into, once we start talking data, then you start talking about data standardization, commonization, right? That whole bit. What's the approach on how we bring a common data model to bear? Sanad, do you want to take the lead on this one?
So common data model. I think there's room for data standardization, but I would say this will probably be across the domain. So we all know what we need to do with the data, right? And the outcomes out of data analysis will be different. So collect the data, standardize it. For applications, it's going to be application level data. For networking, it's going to be different set of data. For security, different set of data. So I think there's room for standardization across those domains, right? But then when it comes to cross-domain stuff, I would say I don't think there's a value there. I think actually it's a very tall order for standardization, because at the end of the day, if you're driving value out of the data per domain and solve a specific problem based on the outcome, that's good enough. So that's what I think.
Well, listen, you need to look for a vendor or a partner out there who knows how to collect and correlate and normalize multi-vendor disparate data sources. So it's not just because I work for Broadcom, but I've been with this company for 17 years, prior CA. And we never sold any hardware. So we had to be multi-vendor agnostic. So look for a vendor or a partner out there who knows how to collect disparate data, correlate it, normalize it, and surface it in a way that's easy to understand. But you're exactly right. If you're not collecting and correlating the data, or you're not collecting enough data, you have 9 out of the 10 ingredients and you'll never be successful.
I don't think we need to have. Well, if you'd asked me the question before the OpenAI LLM stuff, the whole movement, I would have said, yeah, we need a standardized data model, because how do I correlate? But we actually have run LLM models on our network data and our security data. These models are so freaking they know everything. It's all request based. It's all 5 tuple. They can correlate, without me having to do any structured data input to them. So for me, if you ask me, do I need a standardized data model across 2 different sources? My answer today actually is I don't think we do, because the LLM models, they're trained so much. I think they can do the correlation on their own. That's what I think, but I may be wrong.
I think when we're talking about data collection, what is the biggest problem with data collection, while even LLM can do it, is how much do we want to pay to keep the data? So that's what actually when we're talking about that is the big kind of thing that we try to understand first. We know that the data is there. That's why the idea about metrics. How do we change the model that regardless is LLM or basically looking into the idea of data understanding is about how much data that you have, and then from that you build the metric first. Because that's actually when you're talking about unification helps, but it's hard. The hard one is basically to start with what is the first usually we do, isn't it? We just dump every data, which is just become expensive. The one that we try to do, the balancing act, what we are trying to do right now is just metric, putting the metric for the data number one to understand what is really important. Because from that, like you mentioned, if you got the data already there, it's just a matter of I need to keep it this one a day, this one is a year. But if everybody a year, yeah, it's good. But then, yeah, nobody can pay it. So that's probably what we're trying to do there.
I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to is no one vendor is likely going to be able to build the solution you need. And in order to get the abstraction necessary, that commonality for the data model works there. And I think, Pranav, what you're talking about is definitely the future, right? But I think that right now LMs are like they're like secret jokes, right? You don't tell anybody, you keep them to yourself, and so each model is going to train differently to come up with the observation. So do you think somebody like oh no, we built the cloud security notification framework, right? We unified data, security data coming across the cloud to normalize that so there was a single stream of data coming into your SOC, right? Which was a pretty heavy lift, right? Do you see something like that as necessary towards making the kind of progress we need, or do you think it's safe to let each vendor kind of go in their own way?
I agree with you. The former is the most important. There's just too many data silos out there. We need to start, working together as a vendor space to try to speak the same language. No offense to the Ciscos and the other vendors, they do a wonderful job in their space. But I don't have many customers that I meet that are only one vendor in their data center anymore. So
The answer is for us, for many enterprise would be yes, because of regardless it's a data modeling or a metric, what I mentioned, isn't it? There has to be part of that is common among us that we can understand what is really what we want to know first, what is really that we want to know. But again, if you try to parse every data anyway, there is nobody can basically consume it or even basically pay the bill. So I think that's become, at least there is what we call it the min. What is the minimal viable product that we can see using ONAC as the basically vehicle to do that? That would be great to have.
Same here. I believe there has to be a model that we all can sort of agree to and do outcomes based on that. I think the outcome process of getting outcomes out of data will be different based on your vendor implementation and things along those paths. But the data itself, more standardized, the better outcomes we'll get to.
I think I'm going to disagree with the panel here because I just did this exercise. You said it's a future. It's not the future, it's the present. When we did LLM training on our request logs, right? And this is I'm from FI Distributed Cloud. Nginx is a different group. And I thought I'll have to do a big training job because my structure is different, my format is different, and my information is different. That's what I thought. I gave it to my data team, and they said, look, the models are already pre-built. I mean, they already know everything about standard HTTP request logs. They know everything about a standard network traffic. They didn't have to do any training. It was literally, the model existed. It just took the data and it spit out information for me very quickly. So it's not the future. It's already there today. I don't know any standard. It's like search, right? Like, do I need to do like Google search? It just organize everything. I don't have to organize my information for my search to give me good results. I think the process did it itself, and I think that's what I see is happening in this. Is I just is the data is available. There is still a cost for it. I'm not denying that, but the point is I don't think I need to have a standard model and all that, because I think the information out there is pretty standard. The models are already pre-trained, and I think it'll work. It'll work today.
I like that. So you're just going to give us a link to download your models? We're going to be good to go? Right? That's what I'm hearing? I'm just kidding.
It's already available out on the internet. I don't want to give you anything. It's my data team didn't do any work. That's what I'm saying. They just took something that's already existing. They don't do any work.
I think the big question is, what is really the truth? Because that's kind of what you're right. The data already there, the model already there. Even with LLM right now with ChatGPT and so on, is it what is considered what is called the truth? That's the governance I mentioned about that.
Yeah, and the money will talk, right? So that'll tell who the winner is. All right. So let's talk about real-time analytics. We talked about data. We've talked about the NOXOC, blah blah blah. But in the end, linking all of this together to a real-time infrastructure is super hard. Do you think that's a deal breaker for an integrated observability solution? Who wants to go first? Arya, go ahead.
It cannot be real time in my mind, so it cannot be a deal breaker. So, because back into that again, part of how what we're running as for the business, that if we want to be everything real time and real, basically, then the question is will be basically back into that again. Who wants to paying it, and then how much pipe that you need to do that. So real time basically cannot be a deal breaker or will not be a deal breaker. The question is probably for all of us, what is good enough? Maybe that will be the next question, isn't it? In terms of all of us to depend of the criteria back into, I call it the metric. What is really the metric that good enough? Sometimes probably you need more real time than other, but that's kind of where we go.
Just to kind of put a spin on that, what do you think about how the cost justification will need to be done to uplift to reach that level of granularity?
The cost justification needs to be done based on what the business that we need to go. For example, there is a cost for risk for security. So the cost of the risk for security will be one of the topic there. The cost for reliability and availability become the next one. Is that 5 minutes is good enough or 1 minute or 30 seconds? That will be part of that cost justification.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Again, the low-hanging fruit, right? I mean, security incidents, they exist on networks, unfortunately, for weeks before anyone discovers them. So if we can take that window down to a 5-minute poll or an hour, I mean, that's huge. I mean, that is huge success. But I think nirvana would be an uplift and spending some money on silicon and other hardware that can do that telemetry, real-time type of data capture and feed it to a solution on demand. That would be our nirvana. But hey, let's go from weeks down to an hour or 30 minutes to solve a security issue with the network team's help.
So I would say, as close to real time as possible. I think it's mandatory. So it has to be streaming telemetry from the get-go. I mean, now, from the not security but networking perspective, right? If I have a sluggish application and I'm doing my SNMP pulls every 5 seconds or even 2 seconds, right? I have no clue what happened with buffers and transient time between millisecond 35 and 78, right? So the closer to the real time is that I can take the data out, analyze it, correlate it, and do something with it, the better the outcome it is. So I think it's mandatory.
I don't think it's mandatory. I think I'm with you. You're like days. Get it down to 1 day. Get it down to 1 hour. That's good enough. Because look, we've solved this problem in security, right? Your signatures you could do it on batch data, and your signature then runs in real time to block. So you don't need to collect data in real time. I mean, maybe in the future, maybe 10 years down the line, but I think they're good enough with an hour. We're actually good enough with maybe 5 minutes, and that's more than good enough.
I mean, someone mentioned, I won't say who, SNMP is a part of a real-time analytics discussion. Last time I checked, SNMP was dead. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. All right, so we've talked about AI and ML. We've just sort of hinted at it. What's the role of AI and ML? What's the new integrated solution look like? Can we do it with or without AI and ML? And do you think that's going to be the differentiator that really changes usability? Who'd like to go first? Pranab, you want to go first?
Sure. So, I think when we look at, firstly, all my positivity is because of the AI ML at the speed at which it can do it. So we look at it from 3 different angles, right? First is, can I correlate across disparate sources of data, right? That's first. Second thing is, can I make this information consumable or easy to consume across my personas? And the third thing is, can I generate enough visual information so that my operators can then be able to do drill downs, but more importantly, can they take remediation steps, right? So I see it as these 4 things. And there's the speed at which we need to go to these 4 things. If we use the traditional models of creating dashboards and doing joins and then trying to correlate and find a unifying key, that just takes too long. and I think that's why it's being slow and hard for everyone to do it. And I seriously, when I see the power of some of these pre-trained models on just normal data, IP fixed data or request logs, the speed at which they can even generate the dashboards for me, I don't have to even invest in creating dashboards. The model can just create dashboards and then input my config data and then create even the configurations. You need AI ML to tie all of this together. I think that's how I see it, and there's no way we can move at the pace that we need to move without it.
I second that on that because with the amount of data, even currently, isn't it, it's almost impossible for somebody that without any machine learning capability to even process, not even like you mentioned, isn't it, to act on it, just to process about it, to put it in the dashboard, to put it. So that's, yes, AI, ML. I guess ML probably, if you're talking about AI, who knows that, like the Terminator movie, the Skynet one day. But the idea is that yes, with the amount of data, with the amount of timing, with the amount of processing, even what I mentioned about the metrics, to build the metric itself, it has to be learnable. That basically the trainer. This is probably one thing, another thing interesting to see. Who will be the trainer? That will be a task for everybody, isn't it? Because the trainer become important.
So agreed with everybody from different perspectives. So putting aside the amount of data, what we want these outcomes to be, which means the type of correlations that we want, you cannot do with legacy statistics. There's no, no single mathematical formula that you can do all this without actually going down the path of ML and using the clustering technologies they have to get the outcomes that we want. So 100%, you have that.
I agree with all the experts here. There's way too much data on the network today for a human to be able to process and diagnose and triage and find the root cause in minutes before your brand is trashed in social media because what do they say? Down is the new slow, or slow is the new down. Okay. So yeah, I do believe that's how we need to go, but don't try to boil the ocean. Let's tackle that low-hanging fruit use cases like predictive future capacity, outages or anomaly detection or root cause analysis or alarm noise reduction. Those are things our customers are looking to do now because that's manageable and huge success. And then we'll tackle the bigger problems as we chop a little bit at a time.
I think that makes a ton of sense. All right, we're down to our last few minutes here. I'm going to combine the last two questions together. First is what's realistic, right? Let's leave everybody with an idea of what they can really get started today. And then ultimately, what are your final thoughts, right? Is there anything that you really have a hill on that you want to make sure the message gets across on? And just share your experience on how you think folks can take an approach on that. And Jeremy, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think it's all possible. It's not going to be done today or tomorrow, but I do believe there are vendors out there that are already doing this correlation and this normalization and, the surfacing of all the data. Are we pulling in a lot of security metrics at the moment? We're not, but we can. So I do believe it's possible. I think you need to look for a trusted vendor out there who's been doing this for a while. You need to tackle the low-hanging fruit and make your use cases small enough that you can find success and then move up the ladder with those. I think it's all doable, but I also think that it has to be done because the velocity and the veracity and the speed at which networks are producing data today, we have no other choice but to head in this direction.
So I agree with you 100%. And but the velocity of advancements there and what you can do and when, I really leave it up to you guys, you vendors who are building the stuff. So
Happy to do that.
Blueware, select the guys out there. You define how fast we can get there. I'd say we are still at the really infancy stages because again, we're driving Tesla and Tesla goes and so on. Here we don't even see yet, and we have to figure out once we see what we do with what we see. So we're gonna get there eventually.
So in my area, or basically on the enterprise side, basically the big one is, I think Jeremy, you put it right. You already have the data right now. And what you need to basically build is what I call it the metric, isn't it? If you just look into the data by itself, it would be overwhelming. So that's kind of where we're going. in terms of just putting what kind of metric important. In the same time, looking into what we call it aggregation, because you got Broadcom, you got everybody here that coming, you got F5 data, you got everything. Then whatever it is, the next level is to start asking for the ask. It's actually what Jeremy asking for the networking vendor. Start looking into what is characteristic, for example, time base. If there is any time base, looking into that. Today somebody is here, tomorrow is not. What does that means? On the security side, will be probably also interesting to look into what is really operational timing is in terms of what happened. So by doing that, in what we're trying to do is start to build whatever the best of the best in the future.
Sorry.
Give it a turn.
Oh yeah. I think the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Any SaaS platform is solving the problem for NOC and SOC. We certainly are doing it. Some similar Broadcom is doing it as well, and a few other folks. And I think low-hanging fruit is just firstly the data is actually organizing the data so that it's available for both NOC and SOC, and use AI ML LLM models to actually provide and organize it even further, and actually provide more information for for the NOC and SOC operators. So I think the future is already here. It's not too far out. Maybe in a few months we'll see a lot more from many vendors leveraging the power of AI LLM to actually organize and produce usable information for their customers.
Thank you for that. All right, let's do a quick recap. Building integrated solutions for network and security operational landscapes. I think some big messages that we've heard is there's a collision coming between network and security, especially operational front. If not from an organizational perspective, but certainly from a tools perspective, right? I think we've learned that AI and ML is absolutely critical, as well as an integrated data model to take you home. And then ultimately, if you want to take your first steps here and make it real, Jeremy said, right, it's like eating an elephant. You got to take one bite at a time, and you got to figure out what are the use cases that are relevant for you and how do you drive them home, right? All right. Thanks, everybody. A big hand to the crew here for coming out today and talking. If you've got any questions, just feel free to grab them. Thank you very much.